Welcome to Potentiality, a space for big questions, deep conversations, and shared wisdom around the most meaningful thing we do as human beings, which is how we parent and educate the next generation. My guest today has spent over 15 years in higher education, rising to the role of Dean of Student Affairs, where she supported thousands of students and staff in their pursuit of academic and personal success. But somewhere along that journey, she recognized that the deeper work that truly changes lives happens beneath the surface of any credential or career milestone. It lives in the subconscious patterns, inherited beliefs, and childhood conditioning that shape how we move through the world long before we're ever aware of them. April Vuong is the founder of Leap and Peak and a trainer of NLP, master hypnotherapist, Reiki master, Qigong practitioner, sound healing practitioner, and yoga instructor. She holds a doctorate in educational leadership from USC, which is, I'm happy to say, where our paths first crossed. Her work guides professionals and leaders toward what she calls conscious success, becoming aware of the unconscious patterns that shape how we lead, perform, relate, and live so that we can create greater freedom, alignment, and intentional choice. By integrating leadership development, transformational practices, and holistic approaches to personal growth, April helps people move beyond inherited conditioning and create meaningful impact from a place of authenticity. Welcome to Potentiality, April.
Thank you, Dr. V. Thank you for having me be part of this podcast.
Thank you so much for being here. April, what I find so compelling about your work is that it begins exactly where mine ends. I work with children and youth, planting the inner architecture of self-awareness, the emotional fluency, before the conditioning fully takes hold. You work with the adults those children become, helping them excavate what was never given and reclaim what was always theirs. Today, we're going to trace that arc together from the earliest imprints of childhood all the way to the fullest expression of a human life. And I want to ask the first question, which is really related to your extraordinary path. You work with high achievers who, by every external measure, are succeeding, and yet something feels off. What is the pattern you see most consistently underneath that disconnect?
So what I see a lot are these high achievers are successfully externally, but internally, they still carry and operate this old identity
Mm.
that they haven't been able to work through yet. They have built careers, titles, families, achievements, but underneath, there's always that, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this really me? And just that question of like, who am I? And
Mm.
sometimes they could be operating under, I don't know, their parents' expectations, society's expectations, whatever we learned as a childhood that we felt like that's what we want to adopt or chose to adopt consciously or unconsciously. That's how we operate as adults. And so I feel like high achievers, they don't lack discipline. We don't lack discipline. I feel like I'm a high achiever, you're a high achiever. If anything, we're overly disciplined, we have ambition, and there's a lot of unconscious pressure that we give ourselves, having to prove ourselves, people pleasing, being a perfectionist, and not wanting to disappoint ourselves, but also the
Mhm.
people around us. So that's what I notice as patterns. And sometimes it comes to, am I doing enough? And all that pressure caused a lot of, I would say, like stress or just all the stuff that happens up here, And in essence, I like to use this word. It kind of comes from, uh, from Buddhism too. It's more like we suffer, we
Mhm.
suffer, but we're suffering here, and that's
Mhm.
how we're suffering in our head. So,
Mhm. You're definitely speaking to my own journey because like you said, you and I are high achievers. We hold multiple degrees and, career titles. And I relentlessly was pursuing that career path, thinking that I was going to be a school superintendent one day. That was my goal. But I collapsed as a principal. And that really started my 8-year journey into healing and truly understanding why it happened the way it did, and had I not ignored or disregarded all those signs that I basically dismissed along the way, how it would have actually ended up. There were
Mhm.
so many signs that I needed to be elsewhere doing something else, but I was so driven that that was the only path I knew. And my health had to basically speak. My body said no because my mind just kept going. And so everything that you just shared is really hits home for me. Sounds so familiar. I know a lot of high achievers have a similar story. And so, working at a deeper level with them, when you trace those patterns back in your clients, how far do they tend to go usually? What is the earliest layer of conditioning you find yourself working with?
Uh, Such a good question. In the work I do, I feel like it traces back before one can even have language for.
Mm,
Sometimes I can ask them when they're letting go of something, right? A negative emotion of some sort. Is this before, during, or after your birth? And
mm,
many would say during, or maybe would say during, maybe would say before, and maybe would say after. So I feel like it is very generational as well. And it could be past lives, it could be um, generations, as I mentioned, right? So I feel that it traces back before some of us can speak.
mm,
Yeah. And it can be like also in our repeated emotional environment. If it's in this lifetime, let's talk about just this lifetime to be more, a little bit more practical and in that sense, right? So it goes back to the environment we have,
mm,
how safe we feel to express ourselves,
mm,
how comfortable we feel. Are we ignored? Do we always get rewarded? Do we always get punished? Are we always made to feel loved? What about um, being too much for our parents or being too much
mm,
for our caretaker, right?
mhm,
And I feel that with these earlier layers, our unconscious mind goes into this too. Um, what they say is our unconscious mind, in at least neuro-linguistic programming, right, is to preserve the body and it keeps us safe. That's what our unconscious mind is there to do.
mhm.
So it tries to keep it safe, whether it makes sense or not, is trying to keep us safe. And that could be um, holding those, some of those things could also hold us back. So I don't want to go too forward and two things that are, stay with your question.
Mhm. I appreciate that. I'm really curious though, how does your client know whether the patterns, the conditioning is coming from before, during, or after birth? That's such an interesting question. Is it through a certain modality, like through a session that it comes out? Like, because oftentimes I find, especially in a professional setting, it's very few people that would really follow this path and really look into the unconscious past lives. At least it's not part of my experience. I feel like when you're on a healing journey, you're almost out of a system of some sort, right? So you can really explore who you are, and you need this freedom and almost this safety protected container for you to do your own deeper exploration. So I'm curious, as you work with people, especially high achievers, where does it really that information comes from? If you could just briefly, I don't mean you to go into depth of a session, whether it's hypnotherapy or something else, but does it really come out in a practice, or they oftentimes even come knowing exactly what they want to address?
Very good question. Oftentimes they don't come consciously knowing any
Mm,
of that, unless they've done the work before. Then they do know, right? But the ones that come to me, it could be their first time. Most of the time, it's their first time. Um, there's in two ways I can feel like they do come. One is through energy work and through their, well, they're in trance. But the other one I want to speak to more so that I work with which is I work with them consciously and with their conscious mind and the unconscious mind.
Mm.
So I guide them through a process where they're going to work with their timeline. We all have a timeline, and they would float up into their timeline, and I would ask them while they're in a light trance. And light trance is it's almost when you're driving, that I would call
Mhm.
that light trance, where you're really into a movie. That's a light trance, right? So
Mhm.
they're sitting up, they're not laying down. It's not that kind of work, right? And I get into a little light trance. There's a trust that we have for each other. We built that rapport already. And I would ask them, depending what we're working on, what problem it is, most of the time it's going to be what emotion we're letting go. And usually we do the major emotions first: anger, sadness, guilt, fear, shame, hurt. And then I ask them for that particular emotion. We work on one at a time. When they're in that light trance, I have them float back into a certain period of that time. And I ask them, when you think of this problem, was this before or after your birth? During, before, and after your birth. And so to answer your question more specifically, they have to trust their unconscious mind, whatever comes up first. So it could be logical, or it could be completely out of this world where they would never have thought of. I'll give you a quick example. When I did it, I'll give you one for anger. I did one for anger, and it took me back to 4 months in the womb. I mean, maybe because my mom told me a story, I don't know, but at that moment, I felt that it was 4 months in the womb. She never told me what month. I don't know. There was a story though, and I'll make it quick. It was because I wasn't in my mind for the story that I had with that exercise, right? Was that I was upset that my mom wasn't happy that I was a female. And so there is a story too, because she's told me before that I'm supposed to have an older brother, but she had a miscarriage. So the older brother never came, and then came along me. So I've always heard that story from her. And of course, in our Asian tradition, um, boys are favored, right? So I had that in mind. But when I was doing the exercise with my coach at that time, I didn't know that I was going to go back 4 months in the womb. So that's when I let it go. And when you let it go, you really have to see the positive learning for you, yourself in the future. It can't be for anybody else. It has to be for you. Does that help answer the question?
Absolutely beautiful. And thank you for that very personal example. And I know we all carry some version of that. I've done a lot of work when a lot of past lives needed to be excavated and healed. And once that happens, if you really trust and you integrate, there's so much energy that is released that it's
Mm-hmm.
almost that post-traumatic energy release, like that now is available for all the wonderful things that you want to do in the world. And I think oftentimes that, I mean, I do want to improve relationships and so many other things. That's why I do the healing work. But oftentimes the energy that becomes available as a result of it, when you let go of all those suppressed emotions, no matter where they originated, it's really powerful. Thank you for sharing. Your path is absolutely fascinating one, April. You've been building a professional career within an organization while simultaneously pursuing all those certifications that I mentioned: NLP, energy healing, somatic modalities. I am curious what was happening inside of you during the times that you've decided to pivot and go into deeper work for yourself and then actually get certified, get trained to help others. So, what was really calling you towards that deeper layer of work?
Um, well, I was thinking about this as you were asking me in what direction I want to go with. So, growing up, I have Asian parents. Expectations were given. You need to reach a certain level.
Mhm.
And I also had my inner drive. I wanted to reach a certain level. So I kept going and going. As you mentioned, I went all the way to getting my doctorate, just where we met, right?
Mhm.
And then I also was married. I'm married again, happily married again, but I was married, and that was my first marriage. And um, this, all of this was based on how I was conditioned. You know, go to school, get all your degrees, get a boyfriend, get a husband that's good to you, and that treats you better, and do all of that. And I felt like I was living up to my parents' expectations, society's expectation, my conditioning's expectation. And when I got to that peak moment where everything started to like fall apart was I wasn't happy. My relationships, and I'm just not with just the marriage, just with people weren't very exciting. There was a lot of reactionary responses to them.
Mm.
And even with the workload with the Dean of Student Affairs and the nature of it, it was a prestige role. It was a role where people respected me and students respected me. And I felt that that was supposed to be the ideal job, the ideal career. But I wasn't exactly happy. Like I felt like something was missing. I've always felt that when I was young, like there's something else for me out there. And I'm gonna go back a little kind of silly here, but when I was young, I loved watching Chinese folklore TV dramas. It's all about people flying in the air, fighting, but especially healing each other. There was some of that. I loved some other stuff on TV where it's about healing or about supernatural. And I just feel like
Mhm.
those are the things that really resonated with me. And I thought I was just a silly little girl who just fascinated about these things until I made a decision to leave my first marriage. Before that, I've already engaged in yoga. I've got a little bit of that spirituality already. Of course, you know, my excitement for the TV dramas with that. I feel like that was spiritual to me too. But after the divorce, I decided to engage in sound healing, where I had a lot of yoga instructor friends. They all did sound healing. I attended their sessions. That got me a little deeper. It got me deeper into my spirituality, and I saw how much it transformed me during a divorce, right? And because typically some people go through divorce, maybe they'll go partying, they will have, you know, have fun with their friends, engage in different things that maybe not so great for their health, right? I just decided to go do sound healing because I love to just lay down and sometimes tune in, sometimes fall asleep, whatever it was. Okay, so then fast forward, I engage in Joe Dispenza's retreat, his
Mhm.
meditations, transformational. Never ever felt that way in my whole entire life when I went until I went to this event. Like I felt blissful. I really felt like that DMT really released somehow in my body for those moments.
Mhm.
And at that time, I was still the Dean of Student Affairs. Fast forward again. The work was rewarding. I was dealing with so many student cases that I really felt I was helping them, but I still didn't feel it was enough. Like I love the healing work. Um, I got my regular certification. I got into sound healing. I got my yoga instructor. I love that impact I made on people on a one-on-one level and how much transformation I saw in the people I work with. So I decided to get my NLP practitioner certification first. And then, of course, I went up and up to the trainers. That was the point where I decided I need to do something different. I need to explore a new business. And eventually I decided to tell my boss, tell the HR team, let me, because I was already doing training and development, learning and development with them on the side, but
Mhm.
not so much as my full time. And I proposed some ideas. It took a couple years actually, with me doing a little bit of the work and then doing my Dean of Student Affairs work and then stepping in and stepping out. And finally, there was an opportunity. And I decided to step away from the Dean of Student Affairs role and then step into the director of learning and development. And as you can see, even the titles I had to struggle with because the old me would be like, oh my gosh, dean to director, is that the same? Is that different? You know, I mean, I felt like it was different. And sometimes, honestly, I think about it sometimes when I'm introducing myself to a bigger audience that in academia where they view them certain ways, you know? But I had to get over it. I had to just tell myself that the impact I make now, and at that time, the impact I will make is so much more in my personal perspective. And it's so true because now in my career now, I work with rising leaders, I work with directors, senior directors. Sometimes I have VPs sitting in my sessions as well, or yeah, so I mean, so I work with a higher level of leaders. Some are my peers, and I feel like the impact is so much more. And I would get, I know this because I would get the feedback from them personally. I'll get a text message, I'll get a call, I'll get multiple one-on-one meetings. And to me, that is much more meaningful in a different way. Working with students is very meaningful because we have a lot of international students coming over and we help them with a life here. So it's very different, but this it hits home a little bit harder for me. So
Thank you for sharing. I'm really curious in your new role, when you do training and development and working with rising leaders, directors, and many other already titled people, do you implement all the knowledge and skills and expertise from all these healing modalities? Is there some form of it that you're actually bringing into your current work?
excellent question. I do. And of course, I work in a professional setting, so I have to be very tactful in how I bring it in. Not everyone is going to be excited about April's woo-woo stuff, right? So I have to bring science into it. I have to bring neuroscience into it. I have to bring evidence into it. And I also have to strategically word things in different ways where professionals will understand it better and be more receptive to it. And those who I feel they are a little woo-woo or they understand me, then of course when we have those one-on-ones, I'll have my filters go down a little bit, you know? But I have to play my part in the environment that I'm in. And I think we all should be able to do that tactfully. That's how we get communications back and forth, and that's how we are able to effectively help each other understand what we're trying to say, right? So I do it. Some of my presentations, there are guided visualizations or meditations, but they're shorter. They're probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I also bring in sound healing to staff for special events or once a month. Used to do it more often, got a little busy, but or employee engagement, I'll bring that in. I'll do some yoga. I weave them in whenever I can. And I do it in different ways where people accept it and are open to it. And if they're not, and there's always an option, if you don't want to, you can turn off your camera, you can close your eyes, you can take a break, you know, I give options, but you would see from the feedback is many of the feedback would say some of their favorite things are the meditation, the visualization. We like it. We just sometimes don't like to admit it.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for bringing that wealth of knowledge into the work that you do. The fact that there is neuroscience that backs it up makes it all scientific and not woo-woo. It is oftentimes perceived as woo-woo, but you and I know this is all science, and science is now catching up. Like Heart Math Institute and many others, Joe Dispenza's work really proves that the human within really comes first. And if we address that, then we can actually do so much more in a professional sense. So just on my behalf, I want to thank you because my journey is very similar. I bring it in a very scientific way with the clients, with the groups that I work with, and those are usually parents, teachers, school leaders, youth, and it's all science-based, but similar practices that you offer. April, I want to ask you, in my work, I work with a concept, at least I call it that way, of the hidden curriculum. All the things that children absorb from not necessarily what we teach, but from who we are in their presence. How do you see that hidden curriculum showing up in adults you coach? And at what point those childhood patterns really become their leadership patterns?
So sometimes we grow up needing to earn love when we're young, should I say. As a child, we somehow perceive in our experience that we have to earn this love from our parents, from our friends. So we overwork ourselves and we expect everyone to be the same. So as a leader, when it shows up as an adult, we could expect that from our staff. Well, I'm overworking, you should too. So
Mm,
the boundaries are not there. It could be also if I was, or any other leader that was not allowed to make mistakes when they were young, because the way that their family responded to it, as an example, then they may end up micromanaging their
mm,
team. It could be, right? I'm not saying that it will, but it could, right? It could show up in so many different ways. Maybe someone who needed to learn um, that showing emotions are unsafe. You know, the other day, my mom was saying to my son, stop crying, boys don't cry. And I immediately
mm,
say, no, mom, boys can cry if they have
mm,
emotions. I mean, they do have emotions, sorry. They can cry because they have emotions. And if they're sad, let them cry. So I had to immediately address that, but I did it on purpose in a very cordial way in front of my son so he can hear it. It's okay. But if they are not allowed to express their emotions, then they might avoid difficult conversations when they're an adult.
mm,
I feel like that happens every day. Every day I see it at work. I have people at my door, I have people on Zoom or just observing people. They don't want to have that difficult conversation. It doesn't have to be maybe they were unsafe when they're to express emotion when they're younger, but maybe they don't even know how to express
mm,
their emotions or the conversation effectively without getting into a major conflict. Maybe that didn't happen at home. And maybe one who was expected to be stronger when they were young. They don't know how to take that support as an adult. Like I feel like that's me. Sometimes I had to learn to be, what's the right word for this? I guess in a marriage, you have I don't know the right word, but basically there's a give and take, right? So I
mm,
have to allow my husband to provide in his definition as a
mm,
husband. We're both Asians, and that's ingrained in him. The male provides for the family.
mm,
And that's great for me, but knowing if it's all, and I'm like, well, I feel inferior. Like I don't want to feel like I have no contribution. So that's something I'm still working through in terms of like, you know what, I'm still going to contribute. I'm still going to work. I still want to be a mom. Like that balance is very interesting, but we have many, many conversations about this. It's like, okay, the roles are different, but because I had to be strong when I was younger, I was like, I don't need your help. I can do this myself. But
mm,
that doesn't always help a relationship if there's no polarity. If one's not playing one role, you don't play the other role, at least in my opinion.
mm. So true. But that really speaks of the awareness, first of all, like self-awareness, how aware you are of your own patterns, how you were brought up, and what patterns are you still carrying into different relationships. I know I'm working on I can do it all, right? And where does it put the man next to me? So I'm still learning to let go and allow a man to take care of certain things. Yes, as a masculine, he has specific role from nature, not only culturally, just from nature. And so really that understanding and really creating a healthier dynamics with the proper boundaries, as you mentioned, really starts with that self-awareness of your own early childhood patterns, which ultimately means doing the healing work and that emotional intelligence work and releasing the energy or the suppressed emotions through crying, regardless whether you're male or female. So, really understanding how the societal norms or messages are actually could be damaging in some cases. So deep awareness that you're speaking to. And you mentioned your role as a mother, and I really wanted to ask you a question about that. So thank you for that example. How has the work that you're doing at this deeper level with all the certifications and trainings that you have really shows up for you in your relationship with your son? And what do you most want him to internalize before the world begins to tell him who he should be?
Yeah, this is definitely a transformation, a transition for me becoming a mom. I think every first mom knew nothing about being a mom, right? And with the work, and I'm so grateful having this opportunity to have done the work and ongoing with myself,
Mhm.
this self-discovery, this inner awareness, this, spreading the awareness of all this is it really made me pay more attention to how I'm showing up for my son. And I want him to know that he's, and then ask the question again, you said what I want him to internalize before the world tells him. Yeah,
Exactly.
I want him to know that he, first of all, is always safe when his parents are around. I want him to know that he is capable of doing anything and everything he wants, and don't let other people tell him that he can't.
Mhm.
Because so often that us adults, based on how we were conditioned, will easily tell a child, oh, that's too hard for you. You can't do that. Oh, don't do this, don't do that. And all the don'ts, and or it's too hard, or even the way that we react towards them will help will contribute to how they internalize their reality.
Mhm.
As much as don't have that intention, they internalize it in their own way. And so I feel that I want to make sure that I'm showing up in a way where he sees me and I'm present with him. It's not perfect, working on it, right? We're humans. We got those cell phones, right? It's not perfect, but I'm present. I adjust my tone because my mom's a yeller, I'm a yeller. It's been an adjustment where we have to tone it down when we talk to them. I regulate myself so that he can regulate himself. I want him to know. We're already talking about breathing, and there's this book about emotions where we're talking about the peaceful spot, on your palm, peaceful spot.
Mhm.
And then we have to count the other ones so that he knows he can stay calm. Does he always use it? No. Sometimes like, I want to find peaceful spot. But he knows it's there, and so I want him to know that he has the power to regulate himself. He has the power to I'm already teaching him some self-healing. He gets numb
Mhm.
feet sometimes when he's just, you sit in one spot for so long
Mhm.
and he's maybe experienced this numb feet about 4 times already. So I make him breathe in, breathe out, and I'll use my hands, I'm like pulling out the energy. And it's so cute because I'm doing it and he feels like it's working because he feels better. So then the other day, my husband sent me this video of him doing this to his dad's arm. And then his dad's like, what are you doing to me? I'm helping with your owie. Where did you learn this? Mommy.
Oh, that
So
is
he's
so
doing that.
cute.
But to me right now, it doesn't matter if it's working or not, but it's like
Mhm.
the intention's there. So I know it's working. But for you to know, my child, that you are in charge of your outcome, you can regulate, you can self-heal. It's just helping him internalize that as a child. So when he grows up, he's not going to play the victim. He's not going to play the blaming game. He's not going to let outside forces or external, people influence him and try to control him. Because that's what it's all about here, right? We got a lot of people trying to control us, whether it's people we know or just the system itself, whatever, right? So I want to make sure that he knows that he's in control first.
Such a gift. It is such a gift, what you're doing for your son. And even if he doesn't understand, he doesn't remember to practice, just the empowerment, right? What he's internalizing is like, I have this magnificent, intelligent vessel. And if I know exactly how to use, how to regulate, how to build, different, even the confidence, this is all regulated energy. Like charisma is regulated energy. It's just really understanding how to work with all of it really puts him at such an advantage growing, like going into the adult world. And that's really my mission with wholeness education, to teach all these skills and just really the awareness of what they possess, the inner power that they have at a young age, so they can then really stay with their authenticity. And this is what I want to ask you next, because I want us to kind of trace the arc together. So, a child who is never taught to know themselves and to regulate is not equipped with the skills that you're giving to your son and to your clients, of course. That child becomes an adult who achieves, as we see in our own example of many of your clients, but who do they achieve for? That was my question going through my own healing journey. I did all of this. I've achieved all of these accolades. Who was this all for? If I am depleted, I collapse, my health is really, it needs a lot of recovery. So the question becomes, who was it all for? So I'm curious, how do you help your clients reconnect achievement with that authentic purpose, like grounded in knowing exactly who they are? And what shifts what they really make that alignment, their achievement with their authentic purpose?
So you're going to have to remind me to answer all of your questions. I feel like that was a few questions. This question really takes me back to someone close to me. And I'll leave it like that, right? Someone close to me. I asked this individual, very close to me. Actually, I didn't ask him, he told me. He says, I do all this work. I try so hard for my mom.
Mm.
And she's getting old. Once she gets old and she leaves, who am I doing this work for? What is it all for? Like, is it worth it? I'm doing all this. And that almost brought me to tears because this is a very close person to me. And I'm like, you are doing this for yourself. You are doing this for yourself, not for anyone else. Yes, it could be part of the reason is to make your mom happy as a, as an outcome. But the main reason you're doing this is for you. So a child who's never taught to know themselves, when they become an adult, they achieve for approval, for belonging, for safety, for some identity that they're taught is important. So I really try to help my clients define what success means to them. I ask them all the time, what's important to you in your life? And then I make them list it out. It could be like family, um, love, finances, career, whatever it is. And we talk through each one. We rank them how important they are and what does it mean for each one. And I even dive deeper. Don't tell me what that means, and I'll make a list out of it. And I'll ask, well, what does that mean? How is that important to you? We go so deep. So, because I want them to know that your life is yours, and maybe some of them is inherited by your family, but it's still your life, meaning you still make choices for what you inherited. Culture plays into it too,
Mhm.
but that's where I want them to know that it's also safe to operate on what's today's environment, what it is safe for you today.
Mhm.
Culture sets some of our foundation, some is great, and some doesn't work for today.
Mhm.
So we have to understand. I mean, if I really embody the old culture, the old traditions, then I wouldn't have remarried. I would feel shameful that I
Mm.
was divorced and I'm the most shameful person in the world. And I was like, forget that. Like, I'm you know, I ain't gonna go down that route.
Good
But
for you.
that was something that I had to process, and
Mhm.
so great that my mom also processed. Like she doesn't care either, you know? I mean, eventually she did care. It was hard for us, you know? And so I want them to understand that a lot of what they carrying on are could be fear-based, could be insecurity, could be anything that was adopted by them but passed on maybe through generations, through
Mhm.
society. And they need to know that they can make that change. They can make
Mhm.
that change. They can break, we call it breaking generational curses, uh, patterns, whatever, right? We can break it today, this lifetime, should I say,
Mhm.
in this moment. You know, we can work on it and break it so that we can reconnect with ourselves. And in the work I do, I feel like when you release all those major negative emotions from the past, you get a new slate. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel angry or sad anymore, but you've let go a big chunk of what held you back all along. But now you know you have those tools. Now you know you're more self-aware that those things held you back. And once you can let some of those things go, I think your true self or your authentic self start coming out. And that changes your energy. And then what does Joe Dispenza say? You change your energy, you change your life.
Your life. Mhm.
And once you start noticing and seeing how that works, you're gonna keep chasing it. You're gonna keep chasing it to create a better reality for yourself and start embodying it. And you'll know that you can do it. Like the clients that I work with, they, as small or as big as they see it, they know they'll never be the same again because now they feel more empowered. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Am I missing anything else?
Absolutely. No, you're not. You did a great job answering all those different layers of the question. Yes, really, it's all about empowerment and understanding that you are the author of your life and having the tools, the belief, and the tools in order to make that happen. April, you work with leaders and organizations. What would it look like for a workplace culture to actually reflect the kind of inner wholeness that we're describing here? And how far do you think are most organizations from that?
Ah, interesting because I'm kind of in the middle of all of that. And I've been with
Mhm.
my organization for, 15 years plus. So that also tells you that my experience is really with this. But talking to other professionals, at least I do feel that at my organization where I'm trying to make a difference, we are really, and it helps because my president, the CEO, has done the inner work as well, has been working on himself for so many years. So he buys into this because he knows it works. And so I think that a workplace culture, at least we are working towards it. And I think that's where we want them to do that too, is we want to provide an opportunity, but we want to act on ourselves to be accountable, honest, emotionally intelligent, purpose driven. And just speaking about emotional intelligence, I feel like that's the key to everything. And I definitely believe that emotional intelligence is spiritual.
Mhm.
Whoever, Daniel Goleman, was that his name?
Yes, Daniel Goldman.
If I ever talk to him, I really want to know, did you have a spiritual awakening of some sort? Because I believe that that is a spiritual concept as well,
Mhm.
put into language for professionals like us to understand. And I feel that the culture itself have to practice and embrace psychological safety,
Mhm.
give opportunities for people to be honest without um, being, having being reprimanded, being or inducing any fear regarding their job. Like they feel they might lose their job or getting promotion. The culture should be a safe culture where they feel like they can speak and give feedback and then the leader themselves or the organizer themselves will take that in, and it could be a collaboration or partnership where it builds the culture together. At our workplace, we have leadership programs for rising leaders. We also have it for um, directors, senior directors, managers, and we also have retreats that we invite all the leaders, including our executive leadership. And in all of those, we weave in mindset, we weave in opportunities to teach about emotional intelligence, teach about accountability, to teach about envisioning a future, which is something that we're planning at this moment. And so I think that a workplace itself needs to be aware of that so that they can provide this learning environment for their staff. Because if they have, if they feel that their organizations is investing in their people, the people will then invest back in their time, in their effort, and their work. Because then the organization is not just caring about, are you getting the job done? They're caring about the person. They're caring about their development. Regardless if they decide to stay or leave, if this should say they stay, great. They're now coaching their team with these little nuggets they learned, and we grow together. If they choose to leave, they're going to take that somewhere else, and they're going to influence the people, impact the people over there. So, does that answer the question?
That is such a conscious approach to
Mhm.
running a team and to leadership. I think what you're really speaking to is about having conscious and healed leaders running the organizations, because I can't imagine the cultural shift that you're trying to bring with the work that you're doing would be as successful without a leader who has done their work and understands the power of it, actually believes in it, and wants to empower their team and their organization members with that. Very
I
conscious
would like to
approach.
add, I'd like to
Yes,
add
of
to that
course.
real quick too. Something that I've been working on and trying to put out more, and it's always a process for it, is more one-on-one coaching
Mhm.
for leaders who wants that intimate coaching versus learning in a group environment, because everyone learns differently and they approach ideas and concepts and give feedback very differently. So I think that organizations who somehow can incorporate the one-on-one coaching, leadership coaching, or give opportunities for them to have coaches outside, that really helps the individual to then develop even further and evolve even further. And I think that's really the next step for organizations to tap into, is to invest in people in their evolution.
It's wonderful, and it really gives me hope that the organizations like yours are gonna grow and there will be more. Like the example, the model will basically be adopted, and other organizations will start investing in the personal coaching, because that deeper personal work cannot be done within a group usually. So important. I want to ask you the last potentiality. It's a traditional potentiality question. If every child grew up knowing who they are, emotionally fluent, inner aligned, rooted in their own purpose, what becomes possible, not just for them, but for the organizations they will lead, the families they will raise, and the world that they will shape in the future?
Such a big question. Did it change the world, right? I think that I believe that if every child grew up emotionally fluent and aligned inside, connected with their purpose, how magical is that? Can that be, right? The world would be so different. We wouldn't have these adults trying to dominate, to be powerful, to there's not so many different sides. I mean, I was just talking about this, and I'll be very succinct in this. Is like I feel like, but I'll be very diplomatic about this too. Okay, so and real fast is I feel like in religion, it's the humans that add to it. You know, and my mom, when these people were talking about this religion, that religion, I won't really name it, right? And they're comparing it. And I really wanted to say, but I was trying to play the child at that time. I'm not going to step into this adult relationship, like adult conversation, more like the old lady conversations, right? That's it. But in my head, I was like, it's the humans that's adding to this. You guys are comparing which one's better and who's more powerful or who's better, you know? And of course, people do that with everything. And that's why chaos happens, is because we try to dominate. We try to be better, comparing. There's judgment. And anyway, so there's also like leaders who they won't feel the need to perform to feel worthy if they really are aligned and have their own sense of purpose. They won't feel like they have to prove themselves. In meetings, you're not going to try to have one up than the other person, or you're not going to, it's okay for you to be vulnerable at that point, right? If there's a certain point where you have to be vulnerable in front of your team, you don't have to prove yourself all the time. Parents don't always have to control to feel like, to feel safe in their role, or to feel like that's the only way your child is going to listen. Maybe if they soften up a little bit and go down to their level, try a little harder. I know it takes sometimes with toddlers kind of hard, but it could change. We just have to be patient. And at an organizational level, I even think, I'm so grateful that CEO is aligned in this area, but for many organizations, it starts from the top, right? It trickles down. So I think it's a mirror image of all of it. And if they are more tuned into all of this, then people will feel less burnt out. They don't feel like they always have to chase to achieve results. And I'm talking about feeling having to chase. If they can choose to, that's part of their innate, their drive. They can, but it's not about I'm trying to prove myself and chase. Um, and
Beautifully said.
back to your business name, is they will create and come from wholeness instead of from some wound that they had when they were younger.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
it
to me,
really
that's the
starts
future of
with
parenting.
personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. That's the future of parenting, education, leadership, and ultimately conscious success.
Mhm. Thank you very much. And I think that's exactly why we are in this discussion with you today, because our work is aligned, our mission is aligned, our dreams even are aligned. I strongly believe if more people do this type of work within a generation or two, we can make a serious dent in the way things are going for the larger humanity. So I want to thank you for this rich and honest conversation. Thank you for bringing the depth of knowledge and experience to this space today. If our audience wants to learn more about the work that you do, where can they find you?
I have more actively is my Instagram, Leap and Peak. So you have to spell out the whole word, LEAPANDPEAK. That's my Instagram. I also have a Substack, which is I guess I can spell it out, https:// open.substack.com/pub/leap and peak. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, which is linkedin.com/in/leap and peak. Okay.
Thank you very much, April. We will include all those links in the description box below this video. Thank you once again for sharing this space and this exploration with me. I really look forward for more opportunities to continue this dialogue and maybe even collaborate at the professional level, because our missions are so aligned. I'm so glad that our paths crossed. I don't know, over a decade ago at USC, and that I get to see the amazing work that you do. Thank you again for being here with me. And we will be in touch and hopefully invite you for another discussion.
I'm so honored and grateful that you reached out to me to be part of your podcast, because I totally believe in your work too. And try to get some of my parents with teenagers to come your way. So I wish everything the best for you too.
Thank you. It takes a village. It definitely does.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And thank
you.
you for being with us today. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. I really hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable. Stay with us, subscribe to Potentiality, and I will see you next time.